So, are you the Dwight Eisenhower of this generation, talking about the security industrial complex and warning governments about it, essentially?
Well, I'm not the person to coin that term, but there's a lot of ways of thinking about the international community of public and private sector actors that think about security, that do security, that consult on security, not only on the internet but more broadly, and which has been ratcheted up since 9/11, and which has an extraordinary power, not just in terms of introducing security measures and security and surveillance measures, but also on people's minds and how we think about security. And I think that's one of the principal things that I want to sort of get across in the study we did on the Olympic Games. That a lot of the legacies are in terms of attitudes and in terms of viewpoints and the culture and the way that we as a community, as the citizens, think about what security means and how it has to be protected and traded off against other values.
And that's this notion of the increased securitization
Yeah.
of events like games. Can you
Yeah.
elaborate on the term
Yeah,
a bit?
it's a number. It's an awful word, but the securitization means the number of things that get regarded as security problems that one has to secure against. So the obvious things, obviously, terrorism, right? But what we saw in Vancouver, and certainly what we saw in London, is because of one's thinking that nothing should go wrong during these events. It's a games without incident. That the number of things that might be considered as wrongs or incidents increases. The number of behaviors, the number of actions. And so in Vancouver, it was relatively trivial issues of public disorder became regarded as security threats, which was going to spoil people's attitude towards Vancouver and BC and the Olympic Games and the careful place branding that had underpinned those efforts.
Most people, I think, see security and privacy as trade-offs. And you have suggested that is not the right way to think about this.
No, and I'm not the only person who suggested that. For a number of years now, people have been arguing that there are ways to have appropriate security without having those kind of trade-offs, and there's all kinds of technologies that can do that. Privacy-enhancing technologies. My colleague, the Commissioner of Ontario, Anne Cavoukian, has been promoting a notion of privacy by design, and that's essentially what it means. Not thinking in terms of these false dichotomies of between privacy and security. Not thinking that in order to have security, you've got to capture loads and loads and loads of data on individual citizens. There are ways to do it where you can protect people's civil liberties, protect people's privacy, but also make sure you achieve the reasonable security goals that we have.
Is it your sense that governments in Canada get this, or are they focused, perhaps for the reasons you've suggested, much more on the security issue?
I think some governments get it, but the real problem is that privacy-enhancing technologies tend to be quite expensive. Okay, so there are economic consequences. Not that security isn't expensive, right? Introducing full body scanners into airports is a very expensive proposition for what many people regard as a very, very incremental benefit. But nevertheless, if you're trying to build a sophisticated encryption technology into things such as video surveillance cameras or facial recognition software, etc., that increases the costs. And in times of fiscal constraint, it's something that governments tend not to do.